This video will cover two learning targets. Number one, you need to be able to distinguish between chemical and physical properties. And number two, you need to be able to distinguish between chemical and physical changes. Another type of classification of matter, other than what is it composed of, elements, compounds, or what have you, is to look at matter in regards to its chemical property or its physical property. The physical property of matter is anything that you can observe about that matter, where a chemical property is anything that can be observed only once reacted. So the main difference then between a physical property and a chemical property is a physical property is due to the appearance, as it is just simply sitting on the table, where the chemical property has to do with the chemical structure, what elements are present and what bonds are present that lead to the ability to have it chemically react. So when you're trying to determine, is this way that I'm describing the matter a chemical property or a physical property, your physical properties are anything that has to do with the size, the shape, inherent properties that are there always, like freezing points, boiling points, melting points, density, the size, the weight, anything that you can assess of the object is sitting there, essentially observations of material as they sit on your desktop, those would be physical properties. Chemical properties, on the other hand, again, are those ones you can only assess once the substance has reacted or is reacting. So how flammable is it? Does it rust? What is the pH, which has to do with the chemical structure? How reactive? Does it react with water? Is it creating a new product? Does it tarnish? Does it make a precipitate? Okay, all of these words that describe the fact that the composition of the compounds or the elements have changed, those would have to do with the chemical properties. Being able to observe and assess matter is all well and good, right? Understanding what attributes are due to the physical form and which ones are due to the actual chemical composition, that's understanding a chemical property or physical property. But the fun part of chemistry is always in how it reacts, right? What happens when matter interacts. So you need to be able to understand when a change occurs, whether that was a physical change of the property or a chemical change of the property. The nuance here, the important thing to understand of the difference between the chemical and the physical is that the physical property means that the chemical structure didn't change. If I change something physically, the chemical composition stays constant. If I change something chemically, that means bonds have been broken and formed to make something new. So when it comes to a physical change, if you take a piece of matter and you change its shape, its size, change the state of matter, mix it into something, dissolve it into something, all these things are just physical changes. Because in the end, you will still have the same chemical composition you had initially. You rip paper, it's still paper. You boil water, it's still water. The chemical composition of water is H2O regardless of the state of matter. Same with dissolving it. If you put salt into water, it still tastes like salt. No chemical composition changed. So the big thing about physical change is it doesn't change what it is. And oftentimes we think about is this a reversible process? Can I easily get it back to what it was initially? Because if so, then it probably was a physical change. A chemical change, on the other hand, will give you a sign that something has actually changed on the chemical level. And the different signs, there are 5 signs that something has changed on the chemical level, is if you spontaneously create a gas or make bubbles, if you create a precipitate, which is a solid forming in solution, if you make light, heat, or if the color changes. Now that color change has to be an unexpected color change, like green became black, purple went to yellow. If you have a color change like red and yellow together made orange, that would be an expected color change that you learned about when you were in grade school. So expected color change based on the color wheel, those would be physical properties. They have their own inherent properties. They're now just blended. If a color change occurs that is unexpected, like pink becoming orange, that would be a chemical change. And in terms of the reversibility, the thing to think about in a chemical change is that, generally speaking, it's very hard to get it back to where it initially was. We say it is not energetically favorable, which means I could do it. Okay, if you take water and you break water up into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas, that's a chemical change. You've taken a liquid and made 2 different gases from it. Can I take the two gases and make it back into water? Sure, but you need a lot of energy to make that process possible. Opposed to a physical change, which if you dissolve water in salt, boil the water away, you get the salt back. So a physical change, it's easier to reverse it. Chemical change is much more difficult. So there's your introduction on chemical and physical. Go ahead and do the form and have a nice night.